on. Yeah. Ilse with the red hair is working at the Grafische Werkplaats, and she coordinates the dye garden. And I will make you a host, and then you can speak, Ilse.
Okay.
Host maken. So the floor is yours.
Okay. You can do something. This is not really working. Yes. Okay. This is what I wanted to do. I actually had a lot of pictures for you guys all set up, but I did it in the wrong way. So we'll have to do with a picture from the Grafische Werkplaats website. And as you can see, hopefully, you can see the dye garden here doing an event that we organize once in a while for people to come and have a look, or we'll do tours. It's not a very big garden. It's like a circle of about 8 meters in diameter. And we divided it into like a pizza point or pie point, like slices. And we used the branches, the cut-offs, the twines of willows for that, just to have a little bit of a pathway in between all the different slices. We got the garden not so long ago, about 3 years ago in 2020. And it was a bit of a mess, basically, when we got it. There was a lot growing. It used to be a dye garden, but it wasn't in use at that time. And people just let it grow for a couple of years. So we first cleared it all out, took everything out of it, except for a couple of plants from the woad and a couple of plants from the madder. We left those in because those are plants that we can use as well. So after a year, I think when we got it, it was like August, so the end of the year. So when we took it all away, it was almost winter. We left it for the winter time, and in the springtime, we planted new plants, created the pathways and everything, and just basically, yeah, watched what happened. We tried some seeds as well, and we also had some seedlings growing in our own homes and then planted them again in the garden. So after a season, the woad was already quite established, but of course it was the second year woad plant, so we could only use it for seeds. And we still have plants from those seeds, and every second year that we have the plants, we collect the seeds. You can dye with them, you make ink with them. And the first year plants is basically the plant that you use for the leaves, and the leaves are what give the blue color if you treat it in a special way. Anyway, we're working on the garden throughout the year with a group of volunteers. We have about 8 to 10 volunteers at the moment. They do change a little bit. Some people come and go. Some people are quite loyal and have been with us for about 3 or 4 years now. So that's great. Both things are good. Sometimes it's nice to work with nobody around you, just on your own. But usually we work in groups of 2. So you have a bit of company, you can share your knowledge, you can talk about things, and we have a WhatsApp group in which we share what we're doing in the garden. And it's usually giving water. Well, at the moment, that's a very important thing since it's very, very hot and dry. The other thing is that we weed a little bit. So we take out plants that overgrow the plants that we actually want to have and want to harvest. We are careful though not to weed too much. We do like a little bit of permaculture going on. Some of the plants that we leave are very good with flowers and attract a lot of bees and other insects, and that's important for the plants that we really care about. At the moment, it's quite established already. We have quite a number of plants. We have the woad, as I mentioned, and madder. We have pansy. You want to say something, Carola?
Yeah, you can down and then you
can
can,
go dry.
yes.
We have the schedule, our plan that we made at the start. Some of the plants that are in here didn't really work out, and some of the plants are well established now, like the pansy, like the madder. This is actually the first year that we're going to try and dig out some of the roots of the madder. We did try some black beans, but they never caught on. All the birds liked them too much, and we had too many snails the year before last. So they all got eaten before they got about 10 centimeter high. So I gave up after 50 plants, you know. Yeah, you have to know when to quit. There are a lot of flowers in there as well, and it depends a little bit on the weather conditions, whether they're going to flower or not. We have like a little film on the website where you can watch us make ink with it. So it can be quite informative. And we use a lot of the stuff to dry and take that to the Grafische Werkplaats, where it is available for people to make inks of and print with them themselves. So far, we tried making silkscreen inks, which is the easiest ink to make because it's thinner than all the other inks. We have made inks for printing with block printing, like lino cuts and wood. That works very well, but you have to use oil, and sometimes you don't want to use oil because it's not as water-based and environmentally friendly. But it does work, and we also made some etching inks, also with oil, because it needs to have the right consistency to print. We did a lot of workshops already, and we tried out a lot of different inks and a lot of different plants. And it's always fun to see what works and what not. And of course, you have to take in consideration that it is a natural-based ink, so there will be changes in color, there will be changes in light fastness. Sometimes the color is different than you expect. That can also be because of the carrier that you print on. Some of the carriers have different chemicals in them that react with the dye that you made, with the ink that you made. So you can get a different color than you would expect, which is also kind of fun. I see some more pictures. Here we are with the volunteers, trying to make some racks to have the madder plant grow up until madder grows really, really tall and really long. And you need something that will keep it vertical, otherwise it will go down quite quickly and will be too moist and will disappear. This is a bit of the madder on the right side. This is what you harvest and what you use to make the blue color of. So we're always looking for volunteers. Yes, I'm quitting. I'm stopping my talk. We're always looking for volunteers. So feel free if you're in The Hague and you want to join us and help us out. It's about once every 4 weeks that we expect you to help out.
Thank you, Ilse, in your beautiful English.
I will give it to you now, Carola.
So can you make my host again, or Elisabeth or Leonie? It's also good. What
Shall I make
want?
Leonie her host now? You ready for it, Leonie?
I'm ready.
Yeah. So if you have questions, we go Is there one question for Ilse now at this moment? No, then we go further, and this talk is is about we are having a beautiful exhibition in our workspace at this moment from Leonie and Elizabeth, and I think, oh, it's nice to organize a talk. And Leonie has also a funding of the government, and that was a really nice project. And she will tell more about that. So, Leonie.
Hello, and thank you so much for the invitation for this talk. And I'm also very excited to see so many people here. Also, so I'm also volunteering in the dyegarden, and I can see Elizabeth, who's also going to present her work just afterwards, and Ellen, who I volunteer with in this group. So that's really nice. Hello. And yeah, so I came to the Grafische Werkplaats because of some funding I got from the city of The Hague, which is super nice because I'm a fine artist, and I did my MA in artistic research at the GBK. I'm originally from Switzerland, so I moved to The Hague 4 years ago. And over the course of my MA, I got increasingly more interested in botany. Also have since graduated, done a course in ethnobotany and ethnomedicine. And as part of my research during that time, really got interested also to use plants actively within my work, not only as a subject to work around, but to use them as materials in my work. So, for example, as plant dyes. And that's how I came to the Grafische Werkplaats and was really excited to learn how to use botanical inks. So I started off personally actually with a course that I did with Ilse, which was incredibly freeing, mostly because I was quite scared about making mistakes with botanical inks. And I was like, oh gosh, if you Google it, you come across many, many, many long schedules and lists on tables of things that you should follow. And I was a bit overwhelmed because I couldn't really understand what half of the ingredients were or how to really approach it. And I was like, there are so many mistakes I can make. The great thing about the course that I did with Ilse was basically just go for it and try and experiment. And that's really what I've done over the last couple of months. So I'm just going to show you a couple of images. I hope that works. What does this? Oh, hang on, I think it just for some reason wants me. I can't hear you, Carola.
You have to share in the middle, and the next page you have also to share at the right side.
For some reason, I do know that, but for some reason it like I have to. It doesn't allow me to do it. I'm very sorry about it. It keeps telling me that like I have to change it in my preferences. For some reason it doesn't work. Why does it not let me? Is it 1 second? I'm just trying to figure out how to best do this. I'm really sorry, for some reason it doesn't let me share my screen. So I think I'm just going to talk in that case. Is that okay, Carola? Sorry.
Yes, I remember there was something because why there is not sharing something. We have did before, but I didn't know it why he it wants. So I think we can send you the paper after it.
Yeah, I think like I'm really sorry, but something about like I have a new computer or got a new computer, so maybe it's something about like changing some files. I'm sorry that it, for some reason doesn't allow me to do it. So I'm just going to talk about it in that case. So in which case I did a lot experimenting with lots of different dyes. I used the poppy and hollyoak and rose and red and yellow onion, red cabbage and fern and spinach and laurier, walnut, reed, coffee, goldenrod, tansy, marigold, willow, gypsywood, lavender, tulip and oak during the time that I worked at the Grafische Werkplaats. Some of them were more exciting to work with than others. In particular, the red onion is really exciting because you get such a wide spectrum of different colors. So it ranges from sort of a pale yellow all the way to quite a dark green, then to red, which is really exciting to sort of see how that works. And I was also, what I was looking to find was to see different fabrics in different ways, but I wasn't particularly interested in getting a particular monochrome image of what I was of the fabrics. Instead, what I was looking for is more sort of stained and a kind of textured and patterned surface on my fabrics. So that actually meant that I had a lot more freedom to work with the different dyes that I was making, which actually was to me way more exciting because it wasn't really something that I had to follow through again and again and see kind of make myself recipes that I could do again afterwards. So it was a lot more kind of trying things out. And I also what is really important to me also when you work with plants, but I think in general as a way of contributing to a world that we live in, is to create as little waste as possible. So also as I was working with the materials that with the plant material, I tried to not really throw any of the inks that I made or any of the plant material away, but instead actually use the leftover plant material that I had. And then also with those materials, actually, so literally the kind of the leftover red onion peels, and actually I wrapped them into other fabrics so that they would stain over time. So I would leave them to ferment in buckets over 2 or sometimes even 3 weeks, and sort of try to figure out what kind of staining I could get in that particular way with the on fabrics. Also, another really exciting thing that I tried out was to work with batik. I had never worked with batik before in my life. And particularly I have a grandma who's very she was really, really into batik. So that's for me personally, very exciting to try out. And again, there it was very much kind of trying to see what sort of happens if I just splatter the fabric with the wax, with the hot wax, and then let these different botanicals inks kind of dry on the fabric, and then you have to iron it out. So it was a really nice way of just getting to know different textures and getting to know different kind of materials. And I also use a translucent kind of fabric mostly because I'm really interested in having things layered and having things sort of creating see-through surfaces. So that's also why the actual results that I got was sometimes kind of a little bit paler because it was on a thinner fabric, but it also meant that I could layer them on top of each other and you could see things through, which to me is very exciting. So it was a really, really exciting working period that mostly just involved kind of head down and go try things out. Also, I kind of started at a slightly bad time because I started in winter, which is, as we all know, not the most garden intensive time. So I actually used at the beginning mostly dried plant material. And again, that's the thing with working with plant-based materials. There is so little, or it's so difficult to predict what is going to happen because there's so many parameters that change a color. So that is even when you pick the flower, if you a plant, if you pick it, if you use it in a fresh state or in a dry state, where you pick it, the soil might determine something about the intensity of a color. There might also I worked a lot with vinegar, so changing the pH levels in the water massively changes the color also. So in the case of, for example, red cabbage, you go from a pale blue all the way to pink if you add some vinegar, which is really nice. I also tried sourcing water locally. So I used seawater at times to see if that changed anything or what kind of happened there. So it's very exciting to just try out different things. And yeah, every single time the dye you get, also depending on how long you let the fabric boil, how long you kind of let it condense, whether you leave the plant material in the water for quite a while and then reboil it. All these parameters really massively change the color that you get at the end. So it was a really exciting process of just working with different kind of like dyes. And I really encourage anyone who's excited about working with plant material to less have a fear of it, but really just go for it and try it. I'm by no means a professional in terms of like making inks, but I think I let go of my anxiety of like making a mistake, because that's really what it comes down to, I think, when you just have to sort of see what happens and go for it and try and experiment. Yeah, and like the fabrics that I made eventually, like I think it was like maybe about 50 kind of differently sized squares, and I've sewn them into a huge fabric hanging that spans 5.5 meters by 3 meters that is now currently exhibited at the Grafische Werkplaats. And that I'm actually going to use as a surface to screen videos on. So I'm really interested in layering and texturing, as I said already before. So I actually use it as a surface to make other things on top. So that's the work that I'm going to go into over the next coming months. And that's what I'm still interested in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leonie. If you make my host, I can, maybe you can do it also on your own. Maybe you have a picture of your of the exhibition.
Yes,
We
I
can
do.
show. So
Where
not
do you make you
a
a host?
presentation, but I can do it also.
Where do I change the host again?
Then you can do the participants, and then you have a list. You look for me, and then at the end, at the right side, you have 3 dots, and then if you do that, you can make my host. Sorry, my cat is crazy.
Host. Change host. There we go. Yes, I'm going to put a photo of the fabric I made in the chat so that people can see that.
Okay, yeah, I will do it also a little. Even kijken hoor. Oh, nu doe ik het verkeerd. Sorry. Oh jongens, er zijn heel veel foto's. Docs and you see the docs. This is the exhibition photo. You see it?
Yeah.
Even kijken hoor. And what's nice? Where this was in the making process.
Yeah.
Leonie, do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, exactly. So this was like during the drying process. So I had I kind of made a bit of a mess in the Grafische Werkplaats by just having lots of fabrics hanging everywhere and trying to not obstruct all too many people with the things I was making. So as you see, like I was just trying, like the pink ones you see here are the more cabbagey ones. Yeah, and like the light pale one might even be a Vode, or then like the light blue one might, or then also like a cabbage without any vinegar. So you see the kind of colors that I got were sort of within the same range of, they don't go incredibly super bright. They also change colors depending on whether or not they're wet or dry, of course. So these are wet fabrics at that point. And then, yeah, Carola, I think you also had like one of my batik pictures. If you go a couple of
yeah, here is the end of your work. This is the yeah, here you see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, those ones.
And
yeah, so these are the kinds of stains I sometimes got by just leaving plant material on it. And some of the different, this is, for example, a batik I made. So yeah, this one I particularly like because it looks like a constellation of stars, and really all it is like wax on fabric that I splattered on and then just added ink to like botanical ink. Like, given how purple it is, it must have been a collection of cabbages. And but again, I wasn't very ultra careful about things. I just kind of like went for it, tried things, soaked things up what I had. And a little dog saying hello too. That's very nice. Yeah, so these are the kind of fabrics that came out as a result of my experimentation. And this is the fabric that I ended up making, which is actually only half of it because it's folded in half. So you see there are loads and loads of different textures and color ranges just from using botanical material, which is quite amazing, the range that you can get just by trying things out and seeing where that goes.
Thanks. So I heard for the first time, I thought you was batik, but it's you use it also on an experimental way, such as the dyeing of the fabrics as the same free. You did it very free.
Yeah, totally. I think that was, I mean, that's definitely, I've never in my life made a trial or for anything. I don't really like it. I don't get excited by trials, which is why it's way more fun for me to just like go in, jump in, try things out. And actually, if something doesn't work, then that's also fine. I can like put that aside, or maybe some of the mistakes are really fun too. But I particularly enjoyed just kind of seeing what sort of happens when you actually let the unexpected into the work. So that's particularly with like letting fabrics kind of ferment or leaving them in different solutions and actually not really mixing them well. So like a lot with the even sort of like half moldy inks that I got, because like that's sort of what happens if a room gets a little bit too warm. It's all natural ingredients, so things mold. So I would just like crumple up some fabrics, get a big bucket, and then literally throw all the leftovers I had onto it, leave it for 2 weeks, pull it out and see what happened. And quite often I got pretty bizarre results.
Thanks. So we have now this exhibition, and you are the one. And now we can go to the other person. I finished this.
Can I add something? Because you didn't mention it, but you did use the inks to silkscreen print with them as well. So there is some silkscreen printing in it.
That's actually very true. The reason I didn't actually go too much into the silk screening was partly because it was too controlled for me. And like the image, even though like with silk screen inks, it kind of leaks in a particular way, the texture I got was then kind of similar, often over the different print, and for me it was more exciting to have kind of more stain-like textures on my work.
Too defined.
But it's a very
definite.
Oh jongens, ik ben jullie even kwijt.
Ik ga je even zoeken.
Oh ja, ja. Nou zeg, ik ben helemaal even mijn scherm kwijt.
En volgens mij hebben wij jouw scherm.
Ja, precies. Ja, ik kan mijn scherm niet meer stoppen delen. Daar zit ik te klooien. U deelt dus delen stoppen. Ja. I'm so sorry. Elizabeth, do you want to begin? And do you want to you have a presentation, I suppose, or what do you want?
Just a small, I guess a little bit, not as much as Leonie, because I'm not so familiar with working with the natural inks. But yeah, I can speak a little bit about my time volunteering. And so I am Elizabeth Williams de Garcia. I am the other half of the exhibition, Dogtails and Rabbit Furs, up now in the Werkplaats. I am from the United States, and I studied printmaking in the United States. And it is my background in printmaking that brought me to the Werkplaats. And it has been a learning experience, of course, because printmaking always is. But the Werkplaats is the first space that I have encountered in a very direct way where people are using natural inks. That is not so big in the US. And it's also not very big in Guatemala, where I had lived. So I got very interested, I'm at the phase where I am, what's the expression I'm looking for? I am kind of absorbing, taking everything in. This is my second season volunteering in the garden. And my work is very inspired by nature and stories and animals and plants. And I really enjoy learning about the plants, learning about how they are used. And for me, it adds another layer to the work. It's another part of the cycle of the story of the work, from the plant, how the plant is created, how it's born and it grows, and then how it becomes different inks. And I feel like I am learning so much about this. I just did an eco printing workshop, but just the way it interacts with paper and textile, it's really a whole new world for me. My work is monochromatic, it's in black and white, but I'm really enjoying the process and learning a lot in the meantime. But yeah, I don't have of course, Leonie has been working so much with the plants, and I'm just learning now more about the ways it can be printed and used. But it's been really great. I really like volunteering at the garden. Yeah.
We like you volunteering at the garden too.
Yeah, it's fun. Leonie is also my garden partner and my show partner too, and Ellen as well. Yeah, but it's been really nice.
So, and it's possible to have a background of natural inks, so with the eco printing, and then put your etching print on it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking hard because then you have to put it in water, but that's possible. I
Yeah.
think so. How you etch paper, you also using water, so you have to paint it first and then put it in a water box. But it will be possible.
Yeah, and I had also looked into, and it's been about a year now. I've been really thinking about it. I'm not at the point, but I would like to try a printing technique called a la poupée. And it's where you take small cotton, or it could be Q-tip, it could be anything depending on the image, and you ink certain areas in color and then black as well, and they can kind of mix. But it would be similar, I suppose, to everything would be one color, the different areas in the image, and then there would be blending along the lines. It's a little less controlled, but it is possible. So
Yeah.
I have been really looking into that, but I'm a little, I guess, scared of it. But that's been on my radar for about a year now of doing that. So hopefully that is something that's going to be happening soon for my work. But
Thanks. So we started the talk with the dye garden in Mariehove in The Hague. And at the opening in Festival Analog Eco, there was also Adelheid, Smit, curator of Textielmuseum. And we talk about it, and she have the ideas to do it also in Tilburg. And last year I was there in the Textielmuseum, and she realized that really outside and inside. So it's a pleasure to introduce you, Adelheid, here, and you can talk. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carola. And I understand now why you couldn't find me, because I had a different name written down. So that must have been a bit confusing. Sorry for the mix up. I will try to. Oh, can you?
Do you want to will you to share?
Yeah.
So I want to make you wie is now host? I think Leonie. Oh, wacht even kijken. Host maken. Yeah. So now you can share inside and the second page also the right under.
Yes. Okay, let me have a one moment. No.
Yeah.
So let me just. Okay, so Yeah, can everybody see?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So my name is Adelheid. I'm one of the curators of the Textielmuseum, and I was also curator of the exhibition To Die For, a project, I should say, because it was a bit of a many-headed monster in the end. We had an exhibition that involved wanted to share like how dyes of textiles are made and what that means for the world. So it was both an exhibition about more the technical aspects of, or the raw materials of where do colors come from, and what sort of effect does that have in terms of our environment, in terms of labor, in terms of history, colonial history. So it was a very broad project. And we also wanted to have a look at how we could sort of create moments that people could join this project and also really be a part of it in on a making level. So when we prepared this exhibition, we also prepared a project around natural dyeing, and we did that especially because we wanted to also see if we could involve people from the city, so different people from Tilburg. We're based in Tilburg. And we wanted to do that through co-creation. So that was our sort of first attempt also with co-creation, I guess. Well, not the first maybe, but most recent. It was sort of an experiment, you could say. And with co-creation, we mean that we sort of create together, both with audiences and visitors and people from the city, and with an artist. And so we have sort of we're thinking through a co-creation triangle with an artist, a target group or participants, and the museum and Textile Lab also as a third party. And in this case, we asked artist Nan Groot-Antink. She's very experienced with making monochromical works around with natural botanical dyes, and she's been doing that for like I think more than 25 years now. And we gave her an assignment before, collection assignment, so she's been working with us before, and we thought this would be a nice next step. She's originally from Tilburg also, so she also feels a lot of affinity with the city. And to make sure that this all went into the right direction, we also asked Maaike Bertens. She's a gardening expert, especially in organic farming and gardening. So and she lived actually across the museum, like across the street from the museum. So that was also a nice local voice to add to the dialogue. And so the idea was always that we would want to create a dye garden that would also stay longer than the exhibition itself, because our terrain is very industrial. It's an industrial heritage from the textile industry, and it's all stones and bricks and very little green. So we wanted to change something about that, and we also wanted to do this more from a sort of community perspective, and also to learn how we should be organizing these sort of collective projects. So for us, it was also really a learning trajectory, and I think we, like a lot of people, learn from each other. That's also the idea of the co-creation triangle, I guess, that participants learn from the artists learn from participants, and we learn from both. It's also a very interesting process. And so the participants, like, together with Maaike Bertens, they created a plan for the garden. They did a lot of trainings, workshops to learn how to dye. In this case, in this center, you can see an indigo dye workshop that they did. And on the right, you see the floor plan of the garden, of the design. And we've had a lot of conversations of how to do it and how to maintain the garden. And so they all built it with their own hands. Obviously, they got some assistance also from our technical staff, but yeah, the volunteers, there were around 20 volunteers in the end. They really built the garden themselves. And well, we use these big wooden boxes because then the garden would both be more mobile, so we could sort of reshape it in, because it's like public terrain. But yeah, also because there's the soil, we wouldn't know what would happen if we would take the bricks out, what would come out of that. So this was the best way to do it. Obviously, there's like some, yeah, stuff you could say about not really growing stuff in the ground itself, but this was a good alternative. And yeah, so the group is actually still intact. I think most of the people that started are still there. It's like they've been running it for 2 years now. So this is the second season, and so last year there was a lot of planting, a lot of creating new plants, and now it's still in full bloom, and it's really amazing. They have also replanted some stuff, but most of it survived the winter and is looking really great. So that's very lovely. And so they maintain it like every week. There's watering, sometimes twice a week, especially with this hot weather, as mentioned before. And yeah, they really take care of the garden. It's really become their part of the museum, you could say. So that's a really great thing. And obviously we also wanted to make sure that this is also documented in our collection. So we also asked Nan Groot Antink as an artist also to help us to create a new artwork that would be also a good remembrance of this project. And that's also actually where the name of the project was originally Van Aster tot Zuring, or from Aster to Soccer, something like that. Sorry, I don't know Zuring in English, but it was a dye plant alphabet that she created, and that was the heart of the garden. And then the artwork was inspired by this postcard that you see here. This postcard was I'm not 100% sure. I think it's from the 30s. And it's they're the faces of a lot of textile laborers in the city. They're pictures of employees from different textile factories, and we don't know their names. So directors of the different factories ordered these people to have their portraits taken, but they kind of forgot to document who these people actually are. And this is something that Nan was really triggered by, and she wanted to sort of pay tribute to these people, and by creating new portraits in a way, also from people from Tilburg, but this time with more of their story to it. So she asked all the volunteers to choose their own favorite plant to dye with, and they all started dyeing. We did some collective dyeing sessions, but they also dyed at home, and they used their favorite plants, sometimes from the garden, but also sometimes just from their own gardens, for example, to create a new small monochrome panels in different shades of different colors. And they all made this paper that you see here with the plants of their preference dried with their story, like why they like the plant, or maybe a personal story that they wanted to share, why the plant is important to them, a little sample, so there's like a sort of a process and also a sort of personal story with their names, in a sort of attempt to, through maybe a bit more of an organic approach, to sort of recreate these portraits. So here you see the first sketch that Nan actually made, and she made that before the exhibition opened. And when so she hung this in the exhibition space to sort of give people already an impression of how it would grow and what it would look like. And by the time that the volunteers had all made their own monochromes and created their own leaflets there, then she took those out, and they replaced them for the different parts of all the volunteers. And it grew in 3 sessions. It grew in the exhibition. So in the last few months, it became bigger and bigger, which was a really nice way of, you know, actually having the growing part of the plants and everything also part of the exhibition. And in September we had our harvest festival, it was just a small gathering with the volunteers themselves, but we finished the work. So here on the left you see the finished the work in its total. You see, it's just really interesting to see all these different gradings that all came from different plants within the city, either from our own garden or from the gardens of the different participants, and all, with all their different personal stories, and it was yeah, I think it's I think it's a very beautiful installation, and it's now also part of our collection. So we will be documenting a lot of these stories. We also made a nice video that I won't be sharing now because it's way too long, but it's on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. You know, we made a video about this whole process, also to document sort of this making and this collective learning. And let me see. Oh, yes. So this is approximately how the garden looks, what the garden looks like now. So I think, well, it's just really lovely to see like everything starting to grow again and like being back. So the woad is also like coming to its mature stage, and there's a lot of stuff growing. And it's also nice. Last week I was there with another project from a very different, also with a co-creation project, but with a very different group. And then people there started, you know, picking things from the gardens because like, oh, you can make tea of this, and it's really lovely. Can I take some? You know, so it is also like a sort of exchange coming from different communities. So that's I think a really great step. And so the garden will be up for at least the next 2 years, but I'm pretty sure that after that people won't want to see it gone. So I'm hoping we can treasure it for a few more years. And this is also just a good step for our future aspirations for the renovations of our museum. In a few years, we'll be starting a big renovation and also sort of rethinking this whole public area that our museum is now taking care of. And so I think this was a really good step also for thinking through how can we make this surroundings more green, how can we make it more of a place where people want to meet, because that's also something that happened. As soon as the garden was up, suddenly people would come here and would sit here and have their lunch. Before it was only staff that would just, you know, go to those picnic tables and sit there. And now like random people from the neighborhood are also chilling there, or visitors come and sit within the garden. And that's just well, it just shows that green is not just for nature, but also sort of a collective community aspect. That was very important, I think, to add to our surroundings. So yeah, if you want more information, you can find it on this website. And thank you. That was it.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah. So I find it very nice idea also of a growing exhibition. So the plants is growing, so also the exhibition is growing. Are there questions now of any of the speakers, or do you want to tell something? So please.
I actually wanted to ask how active is the dyegarden then at the moment in Tilburg? Like, are people, like visitors, like allowed to use these plants that are like being grown there, or is that like specifically for workshops, or like how do you actively maintain the garden other than like literally looking after the plants growing and watering them?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's also a question that we ourselves are sort of exploring. But for now, we've really said like, okay, so the volunteers that actually built this garden are, you know, sort of part owner of it too. So now they mostly use the plants to do their own dyeing sessions and like have workshops together. And they're also super active in visiting other, you know, gardens and also dye places. And they're also in a way also doing a lot of relationship management for us in that sense. But I think this is a question that we're still kind of thinking about, like how can you use these plants. But I think for them it's also like a really important topic to be able to actually use them. So there was always a wish to not just garden, because most of these people already have a garden or are enthusiastic gardeners, but they also really wanted to have this connection with creating and with making textiles and dyeing textiles. So so they're doing that now in our own education spaces. They have in our own workshop spaces, they do that. But I can imagine that this would become more public or more shared with other people. So, but I think that's sort of the next phase where this group is developing in, like how to bring that about, to make sure that other people are also joining and learning from it.
Ilse, can you tell something about also the activities of the volunteers of our dye garden?
Yes, we have started now to have a couple of days a year as tryout days. So we come together and we think of a subject that we want to try things out with. Like we had a whole day of trying eco-printing on paper. I have done some eco-printing on fabric, and Carmen de Veer, who's also a volunteer in our garden, had done that too, and we were both quite curious how it would work on paper. So we set that up, and with a small group of the volunteers, we had a whole day of fun and a lot of trying and try and error, and great things came out and also not so great things came out of it. And we're planning to do that more often. So I'm thinking maybe making dye. We actually had a day planned, but I'm not sure if we're gonna make that day. But you know, making new dyes, maybe making new different sorts of inks. I like to have a day of tryouts with making etching inks. So Elizabeth, we can try and make our own natural ink for etching and do the poupée thing. It sounds very exciting. So that'll be a day of experimenting. What we also have is, have little workshops at the dye garden itself, or give a tour or a talk there. And I'm sure that will happen more often later on in the year, especially when the weather is as nice as now. It's a pleasure to sit there and just enjoy the whole environment. And of course, we're very lucky. The dye garden, I told you, it's only a small circle, but it's just outside a bigger garden. It's actually part of a bigger garden that is just next door to us. And that is a garden that is maintained also by volunteers. And Jan Mos is there the coordinator of, and he has a lot of knowledge about the plants. And sometimes we go over the fence and, you know, borrow some of their plants for our dyeing experiments and our ink experiments, which is great. So yeah, maybe we can do a bit more knowledge sharing and enjoying both gardens.
So the dye garden is also a social community.
Yeah.
I heard it also in Tilburg and The Hague. You need the people, but it's also I find it very nice to hear that the people are taking the lunch now outside. So it's really more a social project. And for the first time, you didn't know it maybe. I find it nice to hear. The second thing is making inks of natural material. Is it only an experimental, or is it more the receipts such as Leonie saw on internet, a lot of things to how to have to do? So yeah, I find it difficult. So you have to experiment, but there are also a long list and menus how to work. So what's your idea about that?
Who are you asking? Are you asking in general? Because
Yes,
I think
yes.
I think there's a lot of recipes that are like basic recipes that you can experiment with. So it's nice to have a base that you use, like the recipe, like, okay, you boil it for so and so long, and then you add a couple of things and you extract it and you add a couple of more things, and then you can try things out after that. So the basic recipe is nearly always the same, and then you go and experiment with them. I think that's basically what Leonie did as well. I mean, the boiling must sound familiar, right?
I've boiled a lot of things.
Yes, you did.
So
Can I ask Ilse, what kind of paper did you use for dyeing?
I used all kinds of paper because we were trying it out. And I found that most of the etching papers work the best because they're quite sturdy, so they won't fall apart if you soak them in the water and if you boil them even, because I found that the best working method was just put them in a big pot with everything in it and just boil them for a while. I mean,
So
a
you
lot
don't
of the
roll it
recipes
up?
you see. No.
Don't roll it up or put it in between tiles and then put string around it and boil it? No, you just put
Yes,
it all
I
in.
did that too. Yeah, we did that too. We did it in between two pieces of cardboard, and we rolled it and tied it down. A lot of the recipes say steam it, but I found just chuck it in the boiling water. Why not? And then you get an extra color of everything that's done in the water. So if you put some onion skins in there, you get extra color.
Yeah.
I think
Nikki?
for us, what also made this whole dyeing process really interesting is because it's I think everybody needs to go through an experimental phase in general, because it's simply a making process that is not something you can learn out of a book. It really involves hands-on, like hand knowledge in a way. How do you say it? Yeah, it's like making knowledge, and so that has a very embodied need to really, if you want to create something, it's like the first time you ever dye something with natural dyes, it's never gonna be what you want it to be. So and I think that for example, with somebody like Nan Groot-Anting, she's been working for almost 3 decades with natural dyes, and still she sometimes says, oh, I didn't really expect it to be to come out like this. On the other hand, she has a lot of experience, so she could, for example, also help our volunteers and me even. I mean, I also did did a workshop with her, and she has exactly the basic recipe is there, and then still it will always turn out slightly different. So I think that's actually the beauty of it, is that it's just, and that's super exciting. It's really, it opens up a lot of possibilities, but it also makes you constantly, it's like you can learn until you're until you're 90 with dyeing, because it's never the same. So I think that's actually quite a beautiful aspect of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you also in terms of that actually the experience just kind of builds and builds and builds, and then with that, I guess a certain amount of control comes, but I guess complete control is never there. So it's a funny thing where actually also just trying things out in a way that might be not conventional is actually really good to just see what happens, and then you sort of figure out on the way. Also, there are actually quite a lot of YouTube tutorials that are sometimes quite good. Sometimes they're a little bit too strict in terms of do you have to do step by step, like this and this and this, which can also be a bit oh my god, I don't have a whole week where I can only spend, I don't know, sieving lots of things out of water. But yeah, no, I think it's I agree with you in that terms of experience.
Mickey has a question.
Yeah, I have actually a question for Leonie, but also for Adelheid. Thank you for the presentations, first of all. And I was also wondering, how long did you do a project at the Grafische Werkplaats? Because I can imagine that it's very time consuming and we only look at the end result now. And what are the downsides of working with natural inks for you?
So like I spent, I think it was like, it was a working period of about 3 months I actually spent at the Grafische Werkplaats. That kind of actually time-wise involved probably 1 or 2 or 3 days sometimes at the Grafische Werkplaats per week in that time, sometimes just once, but then like usually quite full days. I'm also a relatively rapid worker in as much that I'm like, okay, boil these things, two things at the same time, like kind of let them cool down a little bit. Let's put something in, let's take it out. So I'm not like too worried about like doing everything very kind of concisely slow, which I guess is also why I came up with quite a lot of material at a time. But it does take quite a fair amount of time, like in that regard, that you also sort of like I think I was quite glad that I could do it within the Makkersregeling. So if you live in The Hague, that's a really lovely grant that is very useful in that way to kind of just learn a new skill. And that was what I did in that context. I think the downside of natural inks is, of course, like the durability. I'm sure Adelheid has lots of things to say about that in terms of keeping things over a period of time. Different plants react differently to sunlight, to air exposure, to literally anything. They might fade. I don't know if I was actually to some degree quite worried hanging my fabric in the Grafische Werkplaats for like over the course of this exhibition just now, because it's a bit like, well, so I specifically chose a spot that wasn't in direct sunlight because I thought, well, if it's exposed to sunlight over a really long, well, a month, then that might really fade it, given how long and intense the sun is in the Netherlands. So that's certainly one thing. Then predictability can be a pro or a con, like depending on how you work. And if you need a precise result, then I guess working with botanical inks is quite difficult. Yeah, I think the time aspect of it, also sourcing materials. So like I did a combination. I was very lucky because at the Grafische Werkplaats, they already have an awful lot of dried material from the previous year. So I could partly use that, partly brought in things that like I could just buy at the supermarket, like red cabbage or onions. They always have onions, and onions are really great. So sourcing material depending on the time or where you are. Also, it doesn't, in my opinion, make too much sense to use, I don't know, like a South American plant that had to be flown in over like a mega long distance to just use for dyeing. Like, I guess if you're concerned with ecological concerns within the work, I guess that's like potentially another one that might be worth thinking about. So yeah, these are kind of, does that answer your question or like?
Yeah, thank you. And the question I have for Adelheid was, because you are referring to collective learning, but are you also keeping the processes open for public or artists that also would like to start with, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously in this case, like it was open for everybody that wanted to volunteer. I mean, technically we invited people from Tilburg. We also had somebody from Antwerp that actually sometimes joined us. So there's so in that sense, I think we kept it open. And also we wanted to share it also in the exhibition space so people would, see the process and really get a sort of feeling of what comes into play when you're doing this. But the whole exhibition was kind of dedicated to that, and I think that it's always really hard to find a form that lasts longer than the exhibition itself. We have, that's also a bit of the working method of museums. We work a lot on project based. We have an exhibition and everything is focused on that, and then suddenly after a few months, like, okay, so now we're done with dyeing, and then we're going on to other topics. And I think for me, the fact that the garden stayed was for me a very important way of leaving traces of the projects that we do and keeping that open. There's new volunteers that join the group. So it is something that will, that can go on and that can still generate learning and exchanging also with other dye enthusiasts or garden enthusiasts. What's already happening? Actually, the volunteers do that themselves because they're so eager to learn and eager to share. So in a way, that's already happening. But yeah, that is, of course, as a museum, always a bit of a challenge, how to give that a longer ref than just putting something in the depot. And that's yeah, it's a heritage challenge in a broader sense of the word. And if I just wanted to, I could also maybe respond a little bit to your second question to Leonie, because this is also something that the exhibition was partly try to rethink a bit. Not really sort of, we didn't really want to suggest what would be a better option, but we did show synthetic dyes, natural dyes, and try to sort of communicate the pros and cons. And I think with natural dyeing, what is just well, there's many things. Obviously, a lot of forms of synthetic dyes are definitely not preferable, but I think that we have a very romantic idea of dyeing with natural dyes. And a lot of these dye processes still need a lot of water. They still need metals for binding. There's I think that especially when it comes to the bigger questions for the industry, which is different from, of course, small scale artistic process or designing process, and I think then natural dyes can really have a good could be a very good form, also because they have this flexibility or experimental aspect to them. But I would be careful to frame them as a sort of the solution for the problems that we have worldwide in terms of pollution and water waste, because definitely natural dyes are not going to fix that. So it's all it's a huge ecological problem and also societal problem. But we're going to need a lot of different solutions for different problems, and eco dyeing is not going to fix it all. And now I'm, of course, quite speaking from my own textile background. It's not so much printing on paper, for example, is a very different area that I don't have a lot of expertise in. But in terms of textile, it's really it's such a huge issue that we're not going to fix that with indigo, to say it bluntly. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there more questions? Nobody. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question for Ilse. If I would like to try out natural dyes, do you always need to boil it, or because you also mentioned etching, but would it also be possible to spray it on through airbrush?
Yeah. It's a very short answer, but yes, you can do that. No problem. Yeah. And
Would it also
sometimes
be-
sometimes you don't even have to boil
Oh.
it. You can just put it in a pot and leave it in the sunshine for a week or 2 weeks, and the color will come out of the plant and will mix with the water. And if you put some fabric in it or something, it will dye at the same time. So it can be really, really simple.
Yes,
And-
but you need also sometimes in binding, eh? Because
Yeah, if you want to make a real
paint,
proper paint or ink, then you need a binder to bind the color to the water, and also to thicken your ink, because you can imagine that if you just have a watery ink, it's just not very workable. You need to have a certain substance to it.
But I think it's also different when you use it on paper or on textile, right?
Yes, if you use it on paper, it can be a lot thinner than if you use it on textile. Yeah, but it just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. Maybe I like to try it out.
Little.
Do you sometimes also have leftovers that people can buy or pick up, or?
Sure. and you're always welcome to come and try. And we give a workshop fairly regularly, and we do lots of experimenting in that. So.
Yeah, I think we have a couple of workshops last time, so there are some leftovers, and then we have the summer season, and so after 2 months, I think the most of them are not good. So if you can come at Wednesday, tomorrow or next week, and have a small leftover, so you can try how
Yeah,
it
there's still quite
possible.
a number of already made inks that are there to use, because otherwise they're gonna get moldy, like Carola is saying, and we're gonna have to throw them away anyway. So you're very welcome to come and have a go.
Okay, so I think I find it very interesting, this online talk. I think overall it's also about community, about experimental, and also the open source. I think the idea is also to learn how from other people. We have to we need to talk and to work together. So it will not be only history, but today. After this presentation, I put it on a website and make a little blog about it, and I will share it to you if it's ready. And I want to thank all the people who talk. So Ilse, Leonie, Elisabeth, and Adelheid. And I hope we can contact also with Adelheid in the future about making and working with natural inks. So thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you so
then
much.
we have to end, I think.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, everybody.